in our midst our guest of honor, Dr. Barnaba Marial Benjamin, who is the former Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of South Sudan, someone very familiar with the organization and the most appropriate individual to actually open this outreach event for us. I'm also happy to have with us our counterpart at the national level, Ambassador Antipas Nyok, the ICGLR National Coordinator for the Republic of South Sudan. I have my colleague, Mr. Nathan Biamukama. He's the director of one of our organs as the ICGLR, and it's called the Regional Training Facility. It's familiar to some of the officials from the government of South Sudan who are here, and he joins us from Kampala, and he's actually representing the executive secretary of the ICGLR on this opening session. I would like to first and foremost, after welcoming you, give you a short snapshot about the ICGLR. The ICGLR stands for the International Conference on the Great Lakes Region. It is one of the organizations that South Sudan, as a member of the Community of Nations, is a member of. You are all very familiar with the East African community. You are familiar with IGAD. This is also another regional mechanism that South Sudan is a member of. South Sudan joined in 2013 after independence. And the ICGLR is composed of 12 member states. All countries of the East African community are members of the ICGLR. And we also have from the Southern Africa region, Zambia and Angola, and we have from the Central Africa region, Central African Republic, Congo, Brazzaville, Democratic Republic of Congo. And we also have our former compatriots from the Republic of Sudan. They're also members of the ICGLR. So that is about the composition of the organization, 12 member states. We are also the product of a UN Security Council resolution that mandated the formation of a collective organization to bring the countries around the epicenter of the conflict in the Central African region in 2004, and then culminated in the formation of the ICGLR in 2006 in Nairobi. So the organization's focus is basically peace and security in our region. But as you all know, economic development is one of the driving factors behind whether you can have sustainable peace and development. So this outreach event we are holding, which is the first one we're doing in the Republic of South Sudan, is focused on bringing that perspective to stakeholders in South Sudan, both at the level of the public sector, and we have officials from the government, from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and from the other line ministries where we have initiatives. And at the level of the broader civil society, we have the private sector, we have women, we have youth joining us today so that they could benefit from the presentations that we will make, but also participate in the broader discussion that we'll have. The theme of the event, as you can see, says consolidating peace and development in South Sudan through regional cooperation. We believe that South Sudan is not an island, as we all know, and it has to function and benefit from its interactions with neighbors, both members of the ICGLR, but the broader region itself and the continent at large. So we think and believe that our stakeholders at the national level here learning about the initiatives that we are engaged in will only accrue to the benefit of South Sudan. We have 3 thematic areas we have identified. One is the area that I personally work on, which is economic development and regional integration. So we'll give you a presentation on our work in investment promotion in the region. We have done an investment conference in Kinshasa in 2016, and we are slated to have another one very soon in the Republic of Rwanda, and it is called the Great Lakes Investment and Trade Conference. So I'll give you a presentation on that specific initiative, which is, of course, very pertinent for our private sector that is in attendance today, especially our members of the Chamber of Commerce. And then we'll have a discussion broadly about how South Sudan can benefit from that initiative. The second area is on natural resource governance. We have a regional initiative on natural resources. We have in our midst officials from the Ministry of Mines, and we will give you a presentation on what we are doing in that area and what South Sudan can benefit from that broader initiative. I think this is a very critical one because we all know that South Sudan obviously is very well endowed with natural resources, but those natural resources are irrelevant or insignificant if you don't manage them prudently and if you don't have the governance structures in place to ensure that they accrue to the benefit of all the people of South Sudan. Thirdly, there is an issue that, of course, affects all of us, especially us in South Sudan as a post-conflict environment, the issue of sexual and gender-based violence. So we have our colleague from the regional training facility who is closely working on this issue, and he will give a presentation on that. We believe in the ICGLR that you have to tackle the issue of SGBV, both at the level of prevention, the level of rehabilitation of the victims, and the level of the punishment of the perpetrators. Those three elements are critical for any successful attempt to stop the scourge of SGBV. So this will be another, it's a sober issue. It's not as optimistic as the issue of investment promotion, but we believe that we have to deal with both the difficult issues and the issues that have much more of a positive element to them. So this is just a broad definition of what we are doing today. I would like to make this as brief as possible and request that our host, the National Coordinator of the Republic of South Sudan, Ambassador Antipas Nyok, offer his welcome remarks.
Our guest of honor, Dr. Barnaba Mariar, representative of the Undersecretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Madam Situna, representative of the Executive Secretariat of the ICGLR, especially my colleague here, Ambassador Nathan, representative of the Office of the Special Envoy of the UN Secretary General to the Great Lakes region, ambassadors accredited to the Republic of South Sudan, and especially those one from the member states of the Great Lakes region, other ambassadors and the representative of different foreign embassies in the Republic of South Sudan, members of our civil society, and especially the investment, members of the investment board in the Republic of South Sudan, other invited guests, especially our ambassadors holding different departments in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Republic of South Sudan, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, good morning to everybody. I'm Ambassador Antipas Nyok, the National Coordinator for the International Conference on the Great Lakes region. This morning, we are so delighted to have gathered here to share views and a piece of information related to the investment in the Great Lakes region. This particular event is a warming up exercise to the upcoming investment conference in the Republic of Rwanda probably on the 18th of March, if dates will remain the same. We are privileged as the Republic of South Sudan to have this particular conference, which is the first of its kind vis-a-vis the activities of the Great Lakes region. The investment, this particular activity is part of the programs of the ICGLR. We have 4 main programs of action for the Great Lakes region. First program is peace and security. Then governance, democratic and good governance. And the fourth program is economic development and regional cooperation. The other one is humanitarian issues. These are the 4 main programs of action for the Great Lakes region, of which we take part to implement those activities in all the member states. So here we are happy to embark on this particular program in order to enhance economic development, regional cooperation in the Great Lakes region. We are happy because this region called Great Lakes region have been undergoing a lot of series of wars and destruction without embarking on development issues. But we are thankful to our leaders of the Great Lakes region, people who thought it wise to have this particular important regional organization, so that instead of us engage in engineering wars and hatred in this particular region, we had to embark on different programs for our human development and to sustain our economy. Investment is one of the things that promote growth for human societies worldwide. So we have embarked a lot, our lot. So now this is time for us to think otherwise. And for our young investors in South Sudan particularly, and we urge our people in Great Lakes region at large to have peace of mind and also invest in developing our resources, which is very important. A lot of money have been lost to corruption in most of our regions. So we also urge our people in this particular region to domesticate corruption in order to invest in development. Because sometimes you can have a lot of money gained through other means, but they are not invested in economic development. Some people can have a lot of money, and instead of invest in agriculture and other important production, they go and engage and buy weapons, buy destructive tools in order to destroy the society. Instead of investing in economy and development of human resource, people invest in things that destroy human society. So this is a time for us to domesticate corruption and invest in our own resources. Why would I make that term called domestication of corruption? What does it mean? For instance, if I get money here in South Sudan through other means, instead of banking this money somewhere else in other part of the world, why not using this money and invest in agriculture? There's plenty of water here. We can invest in agriculture, use that money to produce a lot of product. You can employ citizens, a good number of youth, and even you can pay taxes to the government. So the money that you get from the government through other means, the government can also get this money back through taxation. And you can produce a lot of food, take to the market, reduce prices in the market. People can get a lot of food and they live comfortably. what I mean by domesticating of corruption. So if you get your own money through other means, then you have to invest them. And the same thing with our colleagues, other brothers in other parts of the Great Lakes region, that we have this time to have a change of mind and change of attitude and try to develop our own resources for our own benefit, for our own economic growth. So I encourage our young investors in this particular region that now should we attain peace, then we make use of this peace in order to develop our own resources and develop our country, develop our economy, and then promote our growth. We will be benefit at home and also to our neighbors and the region as a whole. So our partners in other parts of the world, we are so much delighted to have invited you to attend this particular investment conference so that we also gain experience and also share information from you. We have to share this information together so that we can benefit from this. Because if we develop ourselves, we will also benefit other parts of the world. We will not benefit ourselves alone. So I encourage you to give whatever piece of information necessary for these young people to take up activities of investment. And then we promote love and also be part of the human family that is also peaceful. With these few remarks, I would like to end up my remarks here and invite you to the Republic of South Sudan, ask you to stay healthy, stay well, and also feel at home, and ask God to bless all of you to stay well without malaria, without anything, and we hope coronavirus will not be here with us. Thank you very much. Thank you. Have a nice deliberations.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Antipas Nyok, the National Coordinator of the Republic of South Sudan. Now, I would like to invite my colleague and the representative of the Executive Secretary of the ICGLR, Mr. Nathan Biamokama. He's our brother from Uganda. Let's give him a big hand.
Our guest of honor, the National Coordinator of South Sudan to ICGR, my colleague, the Director of Regional Integration and Economic Development at ICGR, Excellencies, the ambassadors here present, civil society representatives, representatives of other organizations, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nathan Biamukama, and I'm the Regional Director of the training facility of the International Conference on the Great Lakes region. I bring you greetings from the Executive Secretary, Ambassador Mburu Mwita, who is not able to be with you here, but who would have wished to be around. But because of reasons beyond his control, he was not able to be here, but asked me to say a few words. Now, the ICGR is a regional institution whose mission basically is to transform this region from a zone of instability to a zone of peace, security, and development. As you know, its history, it's almost 14 years since its formation, but it was formed simply because at that particular time, the region was in chaos. There was no stability, there was no development, there was no democracy. It was chaotic. Or what we knew was war, conflict, genocide, crimes against humanity that were characteristic of this region. Parek told you about the membership of the region. I have my own formula, which enables me to explain to my audience the membership. And it's for no reason, but it's just a formula. The formula for me is DRC, just look at DRC, plus the 9 neighbors of DRC, those are 10 now, plus Kenya and Sudan. So you know it without getting headache. But that is what it is. Look at it. If you look at it now, you realize that all those members as we speak are either in conflict as we talk, or have been in conflict and they are recovering, and we cannot conclude that those who are not there yet might not be there. But that's what it is. In fact, I think I will not be wrong if I said that since independence, the only countries that have not been in conflict are probably 2 in this Greater Lakes region. You can talk of Tanzania and Zambia. But the rest have had problems. So when we say they have been having problems, what are we actually saying? We are saying we have lost opportunity for all these years. Opportunities for investment that we are talking about, opportunities for peace, and you know without peace nothing else takes place. And this must stop. That's why when they agreed after the UN Security Council resolutions that Parek was talking about in 2000, they agreed they must have a regional conference, the first one in Dar es Salaam, which took place in 2004. And in there, they agreed they must promote peace, security, and development. They must promote democracy and good governance. They must promote humanitarian issues that affect population, and they must also promote regional integration and economic development. And they must say no to negative forces. They must say no to illegal exploitation of natural resources. They must say no to, displacement of populations, whether because of conflict or because of disasters. They should put in place measures that must make sure that people do not get unnecessary displacements. They must return the property of refugees when the refugees return. They must stop sexual violence. This they have done. And they have put in place measures, legal and policy measures as we talk now, to make sure that that is in place. We have a protocol on non-aggression and mutual defense. We have a protocol on against the illegal exploitation of natural resources. We have a protocol on prevention and suppression of sexual violence against women and children in the Greater Lakes region. We have a protocol on prevention of displacement of persons, a protocol on return of property of refugees. We have a protocol, very important, on prevention and punishment of the crime of genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity. These are binding protocols. And fundamentally, we have the mother law. It's called the Pact on Security, Stability, and Development in the Greater Lakes region. This pact was ratified by all member states of the ICGLR. South Sudan acceded to this pact in 2012. It's binding. And you know when these instruments are binding, you know what it means. That they agree to the obligations in those instruments. And the protocols we are talking about are part of that instruments, including the Dar es Salaam Declaration. So what we are talking about now, the discussions we are having, is basically to see the extent to which we can implement these protocols. And there has been progress on all of these protocols. However, we still have challenges of instability. And this we must focus. We therefore, as the ICGLR, very excited to see the progress taking place in South Sudan now. Progress of peace talks, of discussions, of compromise, of negotiation. We are hopeful that this will take us to another level where we stabilize and the conditions for development and investment and democratic participation of all the South Sudanese will be encouraged and promoted. We should also know that as we plan for this region, for this country, we should also not forget the entire region. We learn from one another. Then the good thing is that these countries have had these challenges. There's no country that is immune as far as we know. But that should be seen as an advantage. To say, when Ugandans had it, how did they get out of it? When the Kenyans had it, how did they get out of it? When DRC had it, how did it get it out of it? And then we support one another. The ICGLR is basically to provide that platform of learning from one another, challenging one another, and developing together. Because there is consensus that there is no country that can stabilize with a neighborhood that is unstable. So it is in the interest of each member state of the ICGLR that the neighborhood is stabilized. Therefore, members, countries, member states must be interested in what is happening in the neighborhood for reasons of supporting the neighborhood to be safe so that their own citizens can be safe. I want to thank my colleague Parek for this initiative. I think it is very important that we learn from South Sudan now, that we need to go the rest of the member states and create something of this nature. We explain the value addition of the ICGLR so that people see how they can use the ICGLR for stabilization, for development, for investment, and for mutual learning from one another. I want to thank you again for coming. I want to thank our partners for supporting us, the GIZ, the Office of Special Envoy. Partnership is one of the principles of the ICGLR. Partnership, inclusiveness, including participation of we don't leave anybody behind, whether it is a youth, whether it is women. We understand that until all walks, all people of all walks of life, all disciplines, all ministries are on board, we might not do much. That's why we have a national coordination mechanism in each member state. And that national coordination mechanism helps you to connect nationally to the region. That is headed by Ambassador Antipas. And before it was headed by Ambassador Gir Tik. So it is continuation of this process that we must not leave behind. Thank you very much for supporting us. Thank you for organizing us. Thank you for coming. Asante.
Thank you very much, our colleague and brother Nathan. Nathan has been with the ICGLR in different capacities for over a decade, and As you can see from his comprehensive assessment of what we do, he knows where we started and where we stand. So I thank him very much for joining us in Juba to come and participate in this outreach event. Just two housekeeping notes. There's a sign-up sheet going around. Please, if you have signed your name, pass it on to your neighbor so that we can capture everyone and be able to share with you everything that we'll be doing down in the future after this event. So please, there are 4 different sheets that are moving. If you have signed it, pass it on to the next person. Consolidating peace and development in South Sudan through regional cooperation. The element of our connection to the outside world and how that can help us in South Sudan not only learn from others, but also leverage those relationships for the betterment of our people. It is my distinct honor to have in our midst, as I said earlier, Dr. Barnaba Marial Benjamin, an elder statesman, a leader in this country, and someone who's very familiar with the work of the ICGLR as part of his work as the former Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation. He has graciously accepted to be our guest of honor and offer the opening remarks for this meeting. So please join me in giving a big hand.
I have the privilege to speak from here, so excuse me, gentlemen, if you. It's one of the privileges of being the guest of honor. Thank you very much. Ambassador Antipas Nyok, the ICGLR National Coordinator of the Republic of South Sudan. I also recognize the young man, Parek Madwood, who has worked a lot in the ICGLR as our representative. And he has been doing well. I indeed attended, when I was a minister, some of the activities he was doing. So he has great respect in that area. I'm also glad to sit here with Mr. Nathan Bayamukama. The first time I met him was during the days of the struggle in Zimbabwe. That is late 80s, 90s, when we were fighting for our country. And he supported us a lot, writing in the newspapers in Southern Africa. I also recognize the presence of Ambassador Sitona here. Also, Dr. Maliet is here, in charge of our investment. Also, Ambassador Muller. Guten Morgen. Nice having you here. We have also the presence of our Ambassador Thiek. He was the first ICGLR coordinator for South Sudan. Then later on succeeded by Ambassador Antipas. I also recognize the civil society organizations which are here. It's good. And a lot of young ladies and young men. There are a few old men here. But most of these people are young people. It's good. Maybe Parek has done a good job. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, allow me to add my voice to express profound welcome to all of you attending this ICGLR outreach event in the Republic of South Sudan. We are appreciative of this turnout and hope that you will get the opportunity to be informed of the vision of this organization as a regional mechanism that represents the view that our challenges can best be managed by us working collectively, and that our destinies As people of a great continent of Africa, we are completely interlinked in so many ways. I want to also take this opportunity to recall that the ICGLR was one of the first organizations we enthusiastically sought to join officially after our independence. And actually, I went to Bujumbura and I raised the flag of our country in 2013. And it was a great honor for our country. It is important that we recognize what ICGLR can do for our country. And that's why I am so happy to see most of you participating in this forum this morning. We have also benefited from the initiatives undertaken by the organizations in the areas of prudent management of natural resources through the regional initiative on natural resources, that is enhanced judicial cooperation, election observation, parliamentary cooperation, benchmarking, investment promotion, and the fight against sexual and gender-based violence. These are activities which ICGLR has been involved in it, and this concerns us as a country. This outreach event is therefore a build-up on existing links between the organization and South Sudan as a member state. We have listened very well to what Parek and also Nathan was talking about as the nature of these organizations. It's very relevant to us. And we have heard that there are 12 countries, and I like the formula of Nathan. I think that was a good formula. Every day I was thinking, how can I remember but 12 countries? So thank you very much for the formula. So you should quote it, Nathan's formula. And it's easy to remember the 12 countries. In fact, we in South Sudan have attended, I remember, so many of their meetings. And they were very critical and very focused on the Republic of South Sudan. Now, the three thematic areas identified for the event today, namely economic development through investment, prudent management of natural resources, and the critical fight against the scourge of sexual and gender-based violence. They are very pertinent and urgent for our country. We all know, all of us here, that our country has a lot of resources. But do they really make meaning to us? Look at the resources you have. Look at the land you have. We are even fighting now on land and where to build a house. Can you imagine? Huge land, fertile land, enormous water resources. We are not even drinking it. And if you look around, when shall we drink even our water? This is your riches. But when you sit on the riches and you don't benefit from it, and people know these guys and these ladies and so are very rich, but look, we are not using them. This is a challenge to investment policies. It's a challenge to our system of governance. It's a challenge to all of us as citizens of this great country. If you talk of minerals, you can know that we are close to DRC in terms of minerals. It's not only oil. You have gold, you have uranium, you have iron, you have nickel, you have all these. Tin, copper, diamonds, uranium, name it. And here we are sitting on them. You look at your wildlife. So ICGLR is very relevant in helping us to direct our attention to use these resources for the benefit of our people and for the region. Because we can say we are about 13, 14 million with all these riches. It means it's too much even for us. It means our region can benefit. So it is important to have peace, to have stability, and embark on development. That's why peace is important for us. And we thank all those countries that are helping us to achieve that. And ICGLR is one of those organizations that we should be actually very prudent of. That is the meaning of natural resources you have. Can you imagine that the wildlife in South Sudan is the biggest in the world? I think you know that. But everybody is going to Masai Mara, is going to Serengeti in Tanzania, and you have in Jonglei here, we are just running after a few cattle to steal them among us. Supposing you exploit that, we will be the second Masai Mara, even bigger. But you need peace and stability. This is the benefit of us being members of the ICGLR. Sexual violence and gender-based violence, for example. In South Sudan, you have the privilege of marrying more than one wife. Can get 5, can get 10. And ladies are also very kind and willing to be number 2, to be number 3. So why do you need to be violent? We don't need that. You see, it's our cultures that we need our people to be aware of. So this forum this morning, I think is good. All of you are here, and you need to concentrate on some of these things. Now, the upcoming investment conference will allow South Sudan to join our neighbors to sensitize the regional and global investment community of the many possibilities for great returns and socio-economic development in the African Great Lakes region. I'm happy to see the Chamber of Commerce and its members in attendance today. And we have got one of our important, can you put up your hands so that they know you? Yes, yeah. You see, he is in charge of that. Still very young, intelligent, well-educated. We need to move forward with such young, talented people. We have a lot of them that can do a good job. Today, along with many aspiring young entrepreneurs, young business people, are there some business people in this audience? Because most of you are young. Can you also put up your hand so that we see you? Don't put it low. I want it up. Now, I think this is good. This is one way of removing corruption. If we have a lot of young people involved in business, they will acquire more and more, and everybody, they will make opportunities to employ most of our young people, and therefore the overcrowding in homes for the few who are working will come to an end. Because we have no social setup where we look after people who are not working. But if we have our resources, developed, then definitely the government can afford to do that. If you bring out all these minerals, all these agricultural potential, all these water resources, enormous fish in the rivers and lakes, The government can actually get a lot of money, of which it can look after those of our citizens who are not able to find work, or those who are old. You can look after them. And we can become one of the first African countries that has a social setup that can look after its children, after its women, and after its elderly and unemployed. That is the benefit of why we need to work together to develop our resources. And we ask, Nathan is here, Pereg is here, and we have our own coordinator, that they must promote and keep South Sudan on focus in these areas. Our agricultural potential, our people are getting hands out. They cannot afford to have breakfast. These are some of challenges that we face, we can resolve. I'm sorry for talking long. If you just give me a few minutes. We are all aware of the great natural endowments in South Sudan, but they are irrelevant and insignificant if not harnessed sustainably and in a manner that will bring benefits to the people of South Sudan through best practices and good governance codes. The ICGLR also has a robust regional platform for assisting all member states to better leverage their natural resources. And I therefore appeal to all of you here, especially my colleagues also in the government, to take maximum advantage of this initiative in this vital sector. We were chatting outside. Some few days ago, I was meeting the Troika. I'm happy our ambassadors are here. I can see the ambassador of Germany. I can see the ambassador of DRC. We have Japanese represented here. We have China, Japan is here. That gentleman from Japan was actually involved in the new bridge, the Freedom Bridge, which is a great, actually we are getting it free. We are not paying, not even £1. They are building it for us. Thank you very much to see you here. We have Kenyan representation. All our ambassadors are here. As friends, they are trying to help us to develop our country for our benefit and for the benefit of the region and even the world at large. You have got, what do you call it, Gum Arabic. We call it Gum Africa also. Gum Arabic here, Sudan, when it was one, is #1 in the whole world production of gum Arabic or Gum Africa. Now, when United States decided to declare sanctions on Sudan, they sanctioned everything, but they left out Gum Arabic. Sudan was allowed to take it anywhere. Why did they do it? Because they need, if Gum Arabic is not there, even Coca-Cola will have problems. They allowed it. But for your information, this Gum Arabic is in South Sudan. It is us who actually produce it. It grows wild. We don't even plant it. It grows on its own. So when I was meeting Troika, they were complaining that, but why now you appointed 4 vice presidents, 1 has not yet come, and there's no government. Was that just a show? So I said, why are we being treated differently from the rest of the world? And Ambassador Sitona raised a very good point before when we were chatting, because I told them, look, when they hold elections in America, the president is elected in September. And then there is no government. It's the old one which is still sitting. They stay September, October, November, December, and then they have a government in January. 5 months. And it is one party that has won. It is not so many parties. But you don't ask them, why have you not formed? Why would you want us to form a government after 48 hours? And Sitona was also pointing out, even in Germany, they do coalition of different parties, and they are always friendly parties. They're supposed to be friendly parties. And it takes them months to form the government, not 48 hours. You have today in Israel 1 year without a government, and they've done elections. They do elections after elections. So I'm talking to you as fellow citizens. You should not ask the same question, because we have so many parties for the first time which are going to form a government. And these parties were fighting, were quarreling. You think they will just form the government in 48 hours? No. It is not politically feasible. You see? So give us a chance to talk. Now we are repairing wounds, you know. For the first time, Riek and Salva, they are even smiling to one another. That's a good step. Members of the SOAS are meeting SPLM, IO, SPLM, Real, SPLM, IG, OPP. So we would like those of you who are here that we should understand that a coalition government takes time. You cannot form the government immediately. And we are not the first to do it. It is done even by the most advanced countries in democracy, like United States. They elect the president in September, and after 5 months, that's when they have a government. We are even better, because we are going to have a government even less than 2 weeks. We are better, frankly speaking, despite the differences we have. So we need to share all these ideas, you know. And when I told this to Troika, we started laughing to one another. Okay, all right, it is fine. Now, the next day, the 5th vice president was elected, so we had 5. That's another improvement. We had 1 minister appointed, because the president cannot do a job alone. He needs somebody to help him. You see, is he going to make the appointments? Heads of state are coming. Foreign ministers are coming. Who will receive them? You need a minister. The president cannot run there alone doing it. So we understand why he appointed a minister in the office of the president. Okay, why appointed what do you call it, Tudgalwag, the advisor on security? There is Sudan peace talks which are going on for the benefit of South Sudan. So you need him to continue doing that. Now, do we need to criticize the president for this? I think we would say, oh, he's doing a good job. Let us go and do more. Anyway, I'm sorry to deviate into this. But I thought to get a forum like this, we need to share this. Now, it goes without saying that we have suffered and witnessed terrible pain as a result of our past and recent conflicts. That pain has manifested itself in terrible trauma, violation from sexual and gender-based violence, and the repercussions to the survivors of these crimes are almost unimaginable. And we thank Nathan for taking this challenge at the level of the organization. It is therefore auspicious that this meeting will also address this monumental problem through the lens of prevention of the crime, healing of the survivors, and punishment of the perpetrators. The work of the ICGLR Regional Training Center in sexual and gender violence is really commendable in this regard. And it is of great pleasure to learn that the center has been working well with various government of South Sudan institutions to train doctors, prosecutors, judicial officers, and psychosocial workers on the best approaches to address cases of sexual and gender-based violence. The presentation today will be very informative to us all here who are sitting here. Finally, let me thank the government of the Republic of South Sudan and the ICGLR Secretariat for convening this first outreach event here. And GIS, this is an organization of the German government, has been helping in most of these areas for their support to this event. I wish you great deliberations and hereby declare this meeting is open. And thank you for listening to me. Sorry, President.
Thank you very much, our guest of honor, Dr. Barnaba. Mariel Benjamin, I want to actually thank him for veering away from his speech. And this is the benefit of having someone of his stature and experience to open our meetings. So it's not as restricted as anyone else would have delivered it, and I think we have benefited immensely from his insights. We are going to proceed, of course, but I want to suggest that we take a short break so we can have a family photo, and some people can have tea, and then we'll come and proceed with our presentations. We'll start with the presentation on the investment conference. So we have about a 20-minute break, and our friends with media will organize a photo op so that we can capture this event. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'll proceed immediately to the investment conference, the presentation on the investment conference. We have an ICGLR investment conference that we have committed to convene at least every other year since the inaugural one in 2016 in the Democratic Republic of Congo in Kinshasa. Unfortunately, we had some challenges with raising the funds for the conference, but we are going to have the conference this year in Kigali, Rwanda. I want to break some news by telling you that we have just been informed last night, literally by the government of the Republic of Rwanda, that they have decided to, as the host, to postpone the conference for a couple of months or so because of the growing coronavirus concern. We would have so many people coming to the conference from some of the countries that are the epicenter of the virus, and there is concern that until there is a clear idea that this thing has been arrested, that we cannot bring 700 people in 2 weeks from today. So that one will be convened soon, and we will communicate the exact date, but it has been postponed from the 18th to the 20th of March to a date to be determined shortly. But I'm going to proceed with the presentation because it's going to happen. So keep in mind that this is happening, and that's why we are doing the presentation, even if it's going to be postponed for a few months. So the investment conference, this is the second ICGLR investment conference. We had the first one in Kinshasa, as I said, and the focus of the first one was all sectors of the economy. But this investment conference that we'll have in Kigali will be focused on cross-border trade and investment within the countries with impact on more than one or two of the member states. So you will see in the examples that I will highlight later that these investments are not purely national investments. They are, or the projects that we're promoting are more regional in nature. The context, of course, the framework for peace, the framework agreement for peace, security, and cooperation was signed by all 12 member states of the ICGLR and South Africa in 2013 in Addis Ababa. And it includes commitments at the national, regional, and international levels to achieve peace and stability in Eastern DRC and the broader region, the Great Lakes region. The Office of the Special Envoy of the Secretary General of the UN, in partnership with the ICGLR Executive Secretary, have been mandated to organize the investment conference. And within the ICGLR, the department that's responsible for investment is the one that I coordinate, and that's the one on economic development and regional integration. So this map tells you about the Great Lakes region. You can see at the heart of the Great Lakes is the Democratic Republic of Congo. As Nathan showed you, there are 9 countries that are neighbors of the DRC. And if you add Kenya and Sudan, you get the membership of the ICGLR. And that's exactly what the Great Lakes region is. We, of course, boast 9 lakes. The total area is about 11 million square kilometers. We have 13 states. We incorporate South Africa because they signed the agreement and they are a member of the Peace and Security and Cooperation Framework. So it's 12 plus South Africa. There's the Congo River, which is, you're very familiar, it traverses the whole region. 420 million people. And it's a very youthful region. 75% of our citizens are under the age of 35. $800 billion in combined GDP. So as you can see, it's a huge market with great potential. I've already talked about the inaugural conference, which was opened by heads of state and the UN Secretary General in February 2016 in Kinshasa. Over 1,000 delegates from different parts of the world attended the opening session and the rest of the proceedings of the conference. We showcased regional investment opportunities in areas of agriculture, energy, finance, ICT, infrastructure, mining, and tourism. 25 illustrative projects were identified, and we are continuing to promote them. Some of them have moved on to the stage of getting financed and implemented. The second edition, of course, after the success of the first one, the government of the Republic of Rwanda immediately expressed interest. As you can see here, we have the commitment of President Kagame to host it at the Kigali Convention Center this year, and focusing on cross-border trade and investment. We anticipate about 700 participants, including government representatives, captains of industry, equity firms, banking institutions, pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, and bilateral and multilateral development institutions like the World Bank, the IMF, the African Development Bank, the Import-Export Bank, and many other institutions, including our own very small bank. We call it the Great Lakes Development Bank. We actually have a bank that is focused on the region. It has just recently been recapitalized, and we wanted to take the lead in spurring investment in our country, in our 12 countries. There will be a high-level segment at the conference with heads of government and high-profile investors and entrepreneurs from the African continent. We will be focused specifically on trade and investment, so our ministers of trade and investment will take the lead in case some of our heads of states will not be there. As you can see in the program, we were anticipating that we would have a trade and investment minister in place, but as our guest of honor, our elder, Dr. Barnaba, told us, we have to be patient and wait, and eventually we will have our trade and investment minister, so there's no concern there. And he has actually done a much better job than any trade minister would have done in framing the issues of this outreach event. Okay, I just want to make a quick announcement. Someone with this plate number, I think they are blocking the way outside. It's SSD 22680. If it's your car, please go down there. So, talking about the economic and investment outlook in the Great Lakes region, you know, we believe that there's an improved investment environment, there's simplified investment procedures. Some of our member states are much more advanced in that realm than others. As you know, for example, even the host country, Rwanda, is at the top of the list of doing business in the world, you know, in terms of ease of doing business, in terms of transparency of regulations, in terms of the banking services that are available. But many other countries are lagging behind, and that's precisely why we are doing this event in South Sudan, so that we can also see what other member states are doing and how can South Sudan also join that process. We believe that even with all the conflicts that are happening, some other sectors should be focused on what their real responsibilities are. The private sector, the sectors that are responsible for regulating the private sector, they should not be hampered by the political crisis that may crop up every now and then. We need to really be bringing best practices from the region and from around the world into our country. So that's a first step from the perspective of the ICGLR, but there are so many other partners that are doing many things that we want to highlight. The Great Lakes region boasts significant natural resources. In specific numbers, the geological reserves or endowment in the DRC alone is estimated at $24 trillion. That is just the DRC. And like Dr. Barnaba told you, South Sudan is not very far from the DRC. So you are talking about trillions of dollars and potential for many generations of South Sudanese to benefit from this endowment. So that just gives you a snapshot of what the Great Lakes represents. If only one country can have that level. And you know, many other countries that people don't even pay attention to, like the Central African Republic, is very endowed in natural resources. But because of conflict, it has not been able to reap the benefits. So we believe that South Sudan, Central African Republic, Burundi, Rwanda, even if they are not developed so much in terms of natural resource extraction, we can envision a future where they can really benefit from that. This region also, in terms of foreign direct investment returns, has the highest of any other emerging market. In fact, if you go to any area in this conflict affected countries of the Great Lakes region, your returns would be better than if you went to any advanced or middle income country. And that's because of the growing middle class, the growing urbanization that our region is undergoing. So even in the midst of conflict, there is a lot that's happening. And this is actually a very positive thing for all the entrepreneurs and aspiring young business people that are in this at attendance today. We have about $1.2 billion and beyond market access, preferential markets. We have an educated, trained, even in South Sudan, there's a growing pool of educated young people that have no access to jobs, but they have the skill set, and they are very ICT exposed, and that's what you want in the worker of the 21st century. The problem is, how do we leverage this growing pool of young people? Every year, if you go to your house, almost all your cousins and nephews and nieces are going into university in big numbers every year, and those people will be graduating, but there are no jobs that have already been identified. So this is a challenge for the private sector in South Sudan especially, and to leverage that advantage to build the companies of the future that can build South Sudan. The government will not be able to do it. It has to be the private sector that is gathered here today. I think we have talked about public-private partnerships as an important ingredient for countries where there's political risk and there are challenges like that. And the region can provide that for major projects. This is just an assessment of some of the latest world investment reports. In the continent at large, $46 billion in 2018, an increase of 11% on the previous year. 5 countries in the Great Lakes region were among the top recipients of FDIs in 2018: Kenya, Tanzania, South Africa, Zambia, and Uganda. Even Uganda has great FDI inflows. And this thing is not always very clear to the lay people. You don't think that there are billions of dollars coming into the region. We have special economic zones that are being established in many countries, and they are drawing investment to the continent at large. In Africa alone, there are 237 special economic zones. Some are still under construction, and others are further ahead. There is growing commitment to regional and continental integration. As you can see, we have finally crossed the threshold of the countries that have signed and ratified the AfCFTA, the African Continental Free Trade Area. So we will all be trading, we will all be lifting barriers and tariffs that are making it impossible or almost impossible for many countries to trade. You know, many African countries are trading more with Europe than with their next door neighbor. And that is just not sensible. So with the AfCFTA, I think there's an opportunity for that to be reversed. We should be trading more with Uganda and with Kenya and with Sudan than we trade with any other countries, because they are right next to us. And of course, that means investment in infrastructure and removal of the barriers for the movement of labor and capital between our countries. I think this is all well known, fastest growing. The output in Africa rose by 3.4% between 2017 and 2018. You know, we have contribution to global trade remains marginal at 2.6 in 2017, but intra-Africa trade has inched up to 16% in 2018 from 5% in 1980. So, you know, in the span of, that's 30 years, from 1980, it remains very low compared to intra-regional trade in Europe and in Asia. The urban population in Africa is projected to reach 49% by 2035. All our people are moving into the cities. And if we don't address that, you know, we are only going to be creating slums and social disintegration in each of our countries. But there is a silver lining there. If we are able to anticipate and we invest in our people and transform our rural areas into production centers, then our people will remain behind and develop those into towns and ultimately into cities. And this is at the heart of the vision of what South Sudanese were saying, that they want to move the towns to the villages, right? That's the idea. But we have to transform that from a slogan into real, tangible work. Of course, there's the issue of ongoing digitization. Almost everyone in this room has a smartphone. If you have a job or you don't have a job, you have a Samsung. You know, it doesn't matter. But I don't know how everyone gets a Samsung S9 even without a job. But they have it, you know, and it is true about almost every country in Africa. No matter how poor people, they are investing in smartphone and they are linking into the global information highway. So that tells you that people are hungry for interconnection with others within their communities and beyond. And they want to learn and they want to participate. So we need to leverage that digitization for the benefit of our people in a way that is productive and moves our countries forward. So these are the sectoral opportunities that we will be promoting: energy, agriculture, mining, infrastructure, and ICT. We could not do everything, including finance and so on, because of the limited focus of the investment conference. In energy, 15 to 20 billion is required in Africa until 2030 to achieve universal energy access. That 15 to 20 billion dollars is an opportunity itself. in terms of renewable energy for the entrepreneurs that are here and for the people who have dormant capital that is sitting in banks that is not being invested. Even in South Sudan, if you invest in renewable energy at a small scale in our towns, in our cities, you will be making a small dent in this 15 to 20 billion energy requirement for the continent. DRC's estimated hydroelectric potential alone represents 23% of the global potential. 23% of the global potential in hydro energy is in the DRC, with all the lakes and tributaries that traverse that big country. The same is true about South Sudan. There's huge potential there because of the many lakes and branches of the River Nile that are dotting our big country. Grid transmission capacity and interconnectedness, pipeline development, storage facilities are some of the other areas for investment potential. You have renewable resources, water, wind, solar, geothermal, and biomass. And in the area of fintech or new technology influence, payment systems, metering, and we have seen that in South Sudan already. The new electricity service, everyone is now using the payment system where you pay as you go. And this is a trend around the globe, and I think there are opportunities for investors, both local and regional, to come into South Sudan and transform the energy sector and really make money in the process of providing much needed power for the people of South Sudan. Not only for consumption at home, but for the factories and the companies of the future. Someone has to provide that energy, and it might as well be someone in this room. Agriculture, 30% of global arable land is in our region, is in the Great Lakes region. Food security and global food demand will only mean that the Great Lakes region and Africa are the solution to this problem. Much of the world is dealing with the challenge of a very, inefficient land mass because it has been used and overused for decades or centuries. Now, South Sudan and countries like South Sudan are the next places where there is arable land that doesn't even need fertilizer for people to be able to answer the demand for food. Not only for us here in South Sudan or in the broader Great Lakes region, but for the whole world. These people will need to be fed, and someone has to have the land to be able to grow the food. And I don't think there's any technological advance that has answered the question of you don't need to eat, you could just survive forever. So until they discover something that makes food obsolete, the Great Lakes region and Africa are the places where this has to happen. So agricultural investment is one of the major areas that people should focus on. Mining, I think our guest of honor talked about the mining potential of South Sudan. I think this will be a focus of the investment conference. And countries of the region are increasingly positioning themselves as hubs for mining processing and value addition. So instead of just extracting the gold and sending it out raw, there's potential there for investment in processing and adding addition to the mining resources that we extract. So this is where we should be focused. Where can we bring the technology, and where can we train our people to be the ones to process and add addition to these ingredients? Infrastructure, of course, infrastructure is at the heart of any investment potential in our countries or in our region. There's some investment in infrastructure, but there's a huge deficit in infrastructure investment. We know that investment, infrastructure investment is very capital intensive. It's not very easy for entrepreneurs to do the investment in this sector at the scale that the countries of the region need. But they can partner with the multilateral institutions. They can actually leverage their own natural resources in a way to barter their resources for the rail and roads and dry ports that they need for them to actually join the global economy. So this is another area that we need to focus on. But in the context of South Sudan, even investment at a small scale in infrastructure can bring greater returns. And I think as stakeholders, we should be talking to our government, especially at the local level, to invest in the opening of the access roads that are needed for us to be able to start to actually move our produce from where they are produced to some of the towns. If we can answer the demand, even the local demand for food, it will be a big boost for South Sudan. Yeah, this is where exactly the focus should be: infrastructure and agriculture, and making sure that there is coherence between what you're doing in infrastructure and what you're doing in agriculture. ICT, like I said earlier, there's wide access to the internet and mobile telephony driving the regions. You know, the ICT companies are making profits in the whole continent by providing access to this vital sector. So it's important that we also identify that there are like spillover areas of investment that investors can look at. You know, in South Sudan, we are just barely starting to get access to fiber optic network expansion into our country. And when that happens, you know, it will open up the space for so many other areas of investment, especially with a very youthful population like we have. So this is important for not only the young people, but also people who are in the investment and private sector to look at that, to anticipate. The successful investors are the ones that see the demand before it emerges. And you know, if you can anticipate what South Sudanese will want in 10 years, you will be in much better position than someone who's waiting to answer the challenges 10 years from now. So I think this slide has been covered in the earlier. There's a sample project I want to tell you about, which is huge and has great implications for the region. There is the construction of a 147 megawatt hydroelectric dam and distribution station between 3 countries of the Great Lakes region: Rwanda, Burundi, and DRC, on the Ruzizi River. It's called the Ruzizi 3 project, and this will supply electricity to Rwanda, Burundi, and the DRC under a long-term, what they call PPA, power purchase agreement. This is just a sample project that we will be highlighting there, and there's some investment that has already gone into that, but there are opportunities for the investors who will be attending to also look at opportunities within the broader Ruzizi investment scheme. It will significantly transform the electricity sector in these countries, all 3 countries, and that's why we focus on projects that have more than one country benefiting from. You know, these are the regional projects, and Ruzizi is a very good example of that. There's another project, and this actually answers the question or the challenge I told you earlier about intra-Africa trade. You know, the DRC and Brazzaville, the Kinshasa and Brazzaville, which is the DRC and Congo, are bisected by the Congo River. And if you are in Kinshasa and you are having dinner on some restaurant on the shores of the Congo River, you can actually see Brazzaville, and you can see the lights of Brazzaville from where you're sitting, and vice versa. So what happens over all these years and decades, there has been ferry transport between the 2 countries, or the 2 capitals. So, you know, Kinshasa is a huge capital of so many millions of people, and DRC and Brazzaville is a smaller city, but it's the capital of Congo Brazzaville. But they cannot really move with the efficiency that you need by using ferry and small boats across the Congo River. So this investment project, which is will cost about $550 million, was recently signed between the DRC and the Republic of Congo, and it will be funded by the AFDB and the Africa Infrastructure Fund. This is one of the projects that we are highlighting. It will put together a rail bridge between the two countries. Once built, the bridge will boost the existing traffic from an estimated 750 million people and 340,000 tons of freight a year to over 3 million people and 2 million tons of freight by 2025, literally 5 years from now. And this is a huge investment. This 550 million will be recovered in no time because the trade between the two countries will be boosted significantly. And from Kinshasa to Brazzaville, and then from Brazzaville to the rest of the interior of Congo-Brazzaville will benefit from this trade. So these are the kinds of projects that we want to develop and promote during the investment conference. We are happy that there has already been movement on the implementation of this project. We really see the light of day. Between Congo-Brazzaville and between Kinshasa and Brazzaville, if you don't want to cross the river by ferry, you have to take a flight. And the flight is literally 15 minutes. You go up, before you reach altitude, you're coming down to land, basically, you know. So there's no reason to spend all that, especially now with global warming. You know, the carbon footprint of that flight alone is very destructive to the continent, to Earth, because there's no reason for people to be flying between these two countries. There should be rail access and other much more efficient ways of. I told you earlier, in the banking sector, we have what is called the Great Lakes Development Bank. It is now operational again. It had faced some challenges with liquidity and financing, but it is now back, and it is ready to absorb additional resources through recapitalization. So all countries of the Great Lakes are eligible to buy shares in the Great Lakes Development Bank. Currently, the shareholders are the three countries of Rwanda, Burundi, and DRC. But they are open to institutional investors and to member states in the form of sovereign wealth funds or their own central banks to actually buy into this. And through the bank, they can then use the bank as a conduit for broader investment in the infrastructure and in agricultural sectors that we talked about earlier. So we believe the improved political and security situation in our countries, the huge untapped natural resources and economic potential, you know, the expanding consumption demand by our people who are moving into the middle class, or at least moving into urban centers, and the favorable demographics. We have a youthful population and a growing labor force that is actually well-trained, or at least has the potential to be well-trained in a very short time and at significantly low cost. All these suggest that the Great Lakes region is the next great growth story and investment destination. This is, of course, depends on a strong political will to create the proper environment for investors to come into our region in bigger numbers that really meet the potential of the region. So that basically is a snapshot of what we want to emphasize at the investment conference. And I'm very bullish about the region. I've been working on this issue now for the last few years. And I think South Sudan needs to really get down to the root of the issues of economic development in a way that is more focused, more coherent, more coordinated, brings on board the private sector, really liberalizes access to land and access to investment opportunities, and brings on board the local private sector. If we are able to do all this, you know, even our political challenges can start to be addressed. Thank you very much.